Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and I'll be your guide on this journey from consciousness to cluelessness and back around again. I have a very special episode for you today. This will come out a few days before December 5th, which is annual Celebrate Shelter Pets Day, and I knew just who I wanted to talk to for this. John Rush is back. John is a professional Canadian football player, a vegan, an advocate for ending violence against women, and a lover of shelter dogs. We talk about breeding, shelter pets, and why you should adopt and not shop. Enjoy the episode. Well, thank you for joining me again.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I thought that it would be fun. I had to look back and see what the day was actually called, but we're recording this in honor of December 5th, which is apparently Celebrate Shelter Pets Day.
There you go.
And I wanted to talk specifically about that on the podcast soon, and I was like, who better to talk to than John?
Yeah, that's fair.
About celebrating shelter pets. So give us if people haven't listened to the very first episode, which shout out to you for being brave enough to be my first episode again.
There you go.
Give us a little recap of your shelter pets that you have right now.
Yeah, for sure. So, I've been adopting dogs since I was 9 years old. I somehow convinced my parents when I was a 9-year-old to let me have this crazy black lab from the Niagara Humane Society. He was a great dog. He was wild, an absolute wild dog. But he was great. He was so much fun. And then we had him for 14 years. And then when I went to college, he passed away. But
14 years is a long time for a bigger dog too.
Oh yeah, it was crazy how long we had him.
Wow.
It was like, I think it surprised kind of all of us, which obviously was, it was very good for us. We were happy with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a very long time for a big dog. But right now I have two dogs, Bone and Bailey. Bone's 150 pounds. Most people think he's a polar bear, but he's a Great Pyrenees St. Bernard mix. And Bailey, I was fostering her at the start of the year. And like the first day I fostered her, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to adopt this girl.
And she's still here.
Exactly. Yeah. So I knew I was going to adopt her kind of from the start. So, but yeah, she's about 100 pounds. She's about to turn 1. She's a Great Pyrenees something mix. We're not really sure yet. We got Bone DNA tested, so we know, but we don't know what Bailey is. So,
have you fostered dogs before Bailey, or was that the first one and then you were like, oh, this is going to be a problem?
No, I did foster one dog before Bailey. I fostered Wolfie.
Okay, I do actually remember that.
Yeah. He was kind of there for a couple months. He was a great dog. He was wild as well, and like we had to work with him. He was so he came from like northern Manitoba, where like he was just like a wild dog. Like he had never been in a home. He had never like lived with people. They found him living underneath a porch.
Oh.
They thought he was a coyote at first. So like, yeah, like he was just like, when I got him, he was, I want to say like, I can't remember exactly, but he was like 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And he'd lived outside his entire life.
So literally wild, like not just like.
Yeah, like a legitimately wild dog. And so like there was like a lot of work we had to do with him that like he was just crazy. He was just crazy. It wasn't used to living in a home. But by the end of it, like I have pictures and videos, like he loved it by the end. It was like just like loved to cuddle, loved to like hang out on the couch, like. He was kind of like a German Shepherd, probably a Husky mix. So he had a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So he would like, he loved to wrestle, but like he was a big chill too. So.
Oh, so what about Bailey when you fostered her, where you were like, oh shit, I'm going to keep this dog?
The problem with Wolfie was, he was going to be a smaller dog, and like, he loved to wrestle so much. But with how big Bone is, I always had that fear that like Bone would just throw him and he'd like break his leg or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like that was always like a big concern of mine, because like Bone's not aggressive in any way, like at all. But like when they're playing around, Bone's so big that it's easy for him to just like jump up in the air, and if he lands funny, like there goes a leg, or there, there goes a
Bone
rib
could
kind of
break a
thing.
leg of mine on accident.
Exactly, right? So like I have to be like really careful about, especially when he's like around other people when he wants to play. Like I'm like, hey, like he can play, but like you guys got to know, like he's 150 pounds, and like that's a lot of dogs.
Yeah.
So with Wolfie, it was like it just didn't really make sense for like kind of like our situation. But then when Bailey came around, I got her at like 16 weeks, and she was already like 60 pounds, and I'm like, oh, this girl's a unit. Yeah, like, she's a big girl. And she like loved to wrestle too. She was about that like life where she would like come in hot and like just like no fear. So like, it just kind of worked out. And she's about to turn a year. She's like 110 pounds. Like, and she like when she plays with Bone, she like holds her own. Like I'm not like ever worried about like a situation where like Bailey would get hurt, because like I honestly worry more about Bone because of how like wild Bailey is.
Girl after my own heart.
Yeah, exactly, right. So so like that, when I kind of met her, I was just like, oh yeah, this girl, like she's a unit. I love it. Like, yeah, this girl's gonna stay here.
So you had the foster dog growing up that you convinced your parents to get. How did you get Bone? Like, what was, like, you were in school and so you didn't have a dog for a while, right? Like, going to college and stuff.
Yeah. So it was actually took me a long time. So all of university, I didn't have a dog. Like it just didn't make sense. I had, so much other stuff going on. Like, I think people that get dogs in college, it's not the right move, really.
And you're an athlete too, so that's like a lot of time. And
exactly, right. So like there's so much stuff going on in college, and especially with the added athlete part on top of that, it's just like it's not really a good time for a lot of people to be getting dogs or like animals. But yeah, so like I waited till I was out, and then I like played my first full year at the CFL, and I'm like, you know what, like I really want a dog. Like, I love dogs. I'm established now. I have, money coming in. I feel like I can take care of a dog again. So I actually looked for like 8 months.
Oh wow.
Bone. Yeah, like I was looking every day. Like I knew I wanted a big dog. My first dog, Hunter, was a black lab. He was like 90 to 100 pounds, kind of hovered in there. And my brother has a 130-pound Rottweiler that I love. Yeah, that like me and Hugo are best friends.
Hugo,
like,
oh my God.
Yeah, he loves me. I love him. It's like we're besties, and I lived with my brother for a while, so I always knew, I'm like, hey, like if I'm getting a dog, I want a big dog so I can that it can play with like Hugo. So like I don't want like a small dog. Hugo's a big Rottweiler, right? So
that Hugo would see as a snack.
Well, exactly, right? So like I wanted a dog that they could like wrestle and play around with and do all that stuff with, and that like I could like wrestle with too. Like, I love playing with the dogs, especially in the snow. Like, so I was looking for like 8 months, and then it was like honestly, how I got Bone was super fluke. It was crazy. We were on.
And hold on just a sec. Did you know that you wanted a shelter dog, right? Like you were like,
oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna do anything else. Yeah. Like we at that time, like me and a couple guys on the team like volunteered at the Winnipeg Humane Society and did all that. Like there was no chance I was ever not gonna get a shelter dog. So yeah.
I figured, just making sure.
Yeah. So it was super fluke actually. Like we were on bye week. It was like I want to say like 17 of 18 on the season, and we had a bye week. So I flew home to Niagara to see my parents, and I was looking on the website. It's called petfinder.com, and it shows kind of like all the shelter dogs in your area. It's a sweet website. It's that's where I found both my dogs actually. So I was just like looking on there like while I was home to see, like, because like I'm 2,000 kilometers away in Winnipeg. Obviously the dogs are going to be, very different. So I was looking just like one morning, and like Bone was the first dog to pop up, and it was like this big white dog. It was like Great Pyrenees. I'm like, man, Great Pyrenees. Like I never even heard of Great Pyrenees before.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, so I looked at him and I'm like, man, like this dog looks crazy. Like, but he looks big. Like, I'm like, I gotta go see this dog.
He's a big boy.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, I gotta see this dog, right? You know what I mean? I'm like here for a week. So I messaged him. I'm like, hey, like, I'm here for a week. Like, can I come see this dog? And they're like, yeah, for sure. Like, when works. And I'm like, could be there in like 45 minutes, right?
See you soon.
Yeah, like they're like, all right. So I whip up to, it was in Hamilton. So I whip up like 45 minutes away from my house, and I meet this dog, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm adopting this dog. Like I told him straight up. I'm like,
oh really?
I'm like, oh yeah. So like he just got there like literally that day. And they're like, well, he's not neutered. He needs to be neutered. Like he still needs to get all his vaccines and do all that stuff. I'm like, okay, like that actually kind of works out perfect because I still had to go back to Winnipeg for a couple weeks. Like, because we still had like the last regular season game and some playoffs to finish. But I'm like, I'll be back in like 3 or 4 weeks. Can I pick him up then? They're like, yeah, it's perfect. He'll be like fully healed, fully ready to go. I'm like, perfect. So like, yeah, like we finished up the season. I drove home and went and picked him up like right after that.
And I think you shared this before. I don't think I made this up. Wasn't he like really close to like getting ixnayed?
Yeah, no, for sure. He was so like his story is he's actually from a breeder originally.
Okay.
Like, his first family got him from a breeder. And then at 6 months or 6 to 7 months, he got too big. He was like 100 pounds at 6 months. And they gave him up for adoption. And he's from Quebec, and there's a lot of shelters in Quebec are still kill shelters. And they're not as common in like Ontario or Manitoba. It's like very rare that you'll find that, but in Quebec they're still relatively common. So he was at a kill shelter, and he was there for like, I think he was there for like two or 3 months, and then like they're just like, especially because how big he is, it's like he's not like a cheap dog to like house and take care of. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of money for shelters to take care of them, and most shelters are already on like very thin budgets.
Yeah.
So the shelter was like called out to, like, he was like set to be euthanized that week, and the shelter like called out to like other shelters. They're like, hey, like this dog's like perfectly fine. They're like, we just can't afford to take care of him anymore.
Oh my God.
So we're gonna like have to put him down, kind of thing. If someone doesn't come pick him up. So the shelter I got him from drove 9 hours to Quebec to pick him up, drove 9 hours back, and then I just happened to see him literally the morning they got back from Quebec, and then adopted him like from there.
The universe was like, this is John's dog.
Yeah, literally, right? So like, yeah, it was crazy. Like he was like literally about to get killed, and like he's such a perfect dog. Like, I mean, you've seen all the pictures and videos of him. Like he's a big chill. Like doesn't like he was perfectly trained, perfectly house trained. He doesn't have any accidents. Like he's chewed the odd thing, but like doesn't chew shoes. Like his favorite thing is like wooden spoons. So I'm like, yeah. So like I learned to like put away wooden spoons. You know what I mean?
That's like also kind of cute. Like I know right? He shouldn't, but like it's kind of cute.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but like, you know what I mean? Like he's such a great dog that I'm like, there's literally nothing wrong with this dog. Like it's crazy how good he is, and like how like he's well trained, like knows how to sit, give a paw, like do all the tricks.
Aww.
Like I'm like, man, like I can't believe someone gave him up. And like, not to mention like Great Pyrenees Saint Bernards, if you get them from a breeder, like that's like $5,000 or $6,000. Like they're not like cheap dogs. Like I looked into it after, because a couple of people told me they're like, oh, did you get him neutered? Like you should breed him. And I'm like, fuck no. Like
you're missing the point.
Exactly. Like first of all, no, and like second of all, like why would I do that? And like people are like, oh man, like you can make so much money. Like Great Pyrenees is like, especially good looking ones like that, like go for so much money. So I looked into it, and like they do. Like if you have a good looking, like people were telling me he could be like a show dog because of how good looking he is, and that like I should breed him and make a bunch of money. I'm like, so the family that had him before me, like I don't know what they were thinking. Like I don't know like what they were thinking when they bought him, like what was going on in their minds, because they definitely paid a lot of money for this dog and then gave him up after 6 months, like for no reason, for absolutely no reason.
Because he's too big, right? Like that was their.
But how did they not know he was going to get big if you got him from a breeder? Like, you know what I mean? Like, like he's a Great Pyrenees Saint Bernard. Like they're literally called giant dog breeds, right? Like it's not like you go into
it's not a secret.
Yeah, it's not like you buy like a Ford F-150 and then you get it. You're like, oh, this is a truck. Oh, I wanted a fucking car. Like I wanted a Prius. Like no, like that's not how it works, right?
Well, and that's a couple things you said. I think one of the misconceptions, or at least we like kind of want to think that way to like make us not feel so guilty, is like, oh, I bet at kill shelters, they only put down dogs that are like sick or that are not going to get adopted or whatever. And you're like, yeah, Bone was fine.
Yeah.
It literally is because they couldn't afford him.
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem. Like, it's not just because they're sick, and it's not just because they're bad dogs or anything like that. It's just a lot of the times it comes down to money and just the length of time they stay in the shelter. If they don't get a lot of the kill shelters have set like dates. It doesn't matter like, you know, what kind of dog it is or like how good it is. It's like every shelter is different, but it's like if this dog's been here for 6 months and hasn't been adopted, it just gets put down. Like that's just like the rules some of them have, and it's like it's super crazy, but like I would never blame the shelters.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would never put the onus on the shelters because, you know, they're first of all like completely overrun and running on shoestring budgets. Like, you know, like they can't just like hold dogs forever. Like I completely understand. It's like it's has to like shelters are band-aids to like a gun wound. You know what I mean? It's like if these people like shelters, you know, they're doing the best they can, right? They're at, like all these rescues and shelters, they're trying the best they can to manage the problem. But it's like putting a bandage over a shotgun wound in your stomach. You know what I mean? It's just like it's not solving anything.
No.
And the problem's only getting worse. We're just bleeding more, right?
Right.
So that's kind of like there's a larger problem here.
So what are some of the laws or changes that have happened in Canada or in like different provinces? Because I know in the US it's like state by state has their own different thing and everything varies so much. Is there any kind of changes in the mix?
I mean, it's pretty similar here. Like a lot of it's like local, like municipality ruled as well. Like in Winnipeg, you can't have pit bulls, but outside of Winnipeg, you can. In all of Ontario, you can't have pit bulls. So it's kind of like it's kind of the same where it's like place by place is different. But like for the most part, there really isn't any regulation around dogs at all, except for pit bulls. Like that's pretty much like anybody can breed a dog. Like you don't need a license, you don't need to register, you don't have to do any of that. You know, there's not very much regulation in Canada. Pretty similar to the States, I'd say. Like I know there are a couple of states that are coming out with some really good regulations regarding backyard breeders and things like that.
Yep.
Which is amazing. But at the same time, it's there's so much of it happening that it's like I said, it's not really helping yet. So
yeah. So I mean, obviously you've been a lover of shelter dogs since you were little, but where does the motivation come from, or when did you kind of start thinking like, oh, I really want to like make this a thing I'm working on in my life? Because you started Rush's Rescue Kitchen, right?
Rescue Dog Kitchen.
Rescue Dog Kitchen. Darn it.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I had to throw your last name in there because there was an R.
No, it's the dog's Instagram is Rush's Rescues.
Yeah, and
I have too many accounts.
I was gonna say I feel like I've seen that somewhere. I didn't make that up. Okay, I feel better.
You're good. Yeah.
But you're really becoming more and more and more outspoken about, you know, adopt, don't shop. So like, where does that come from? Like, is it just kind of like a passion that you're like, I care about this. I can't not talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, like I've been adopting dogs since I was young, right? And it just it kind of all stemmed from just like these misconceptions that I hear all the time, and I mean, it's just difficult to stand by and see the statistics and see what these dogs go through. Like when you spend time with dogs, like, and anybody, I always find it very interesting that when you know people that own dogs, and you know those people understand those dogs' personalities, how they can still sit there and, I mean, one, not be vegan, but to still buy from a breeder, knowing that there are dogs in shelters. And like, that's kind of where it stems from, because I'm like I spend my entire basically life has been with shelter dogs. You know, I had Hunter first, and now I have Bone and Bailey, and I had Wolfie. And like, there's nothing wrong with these dogs. Like, they're perfectly good dogs, and they have humongous personalities. Bailey is an absolute coward. You know, something falls in the house, and it could be in a completely different room, and she's taken off. Like, she's a coward. Like, does not like anything out of the ordinary kind of thing. You know, which is fine. Like, and Bone is like the complete opposite. He's a huge protector. Like, will defend anything. But like, you see their personalities, and you see, you know, like, sometimes, like with Bailey, you can see that they sense fear, they sense emotions. Like, these dogs have emotions, and you can really see it when you spend time with them. Like, they're not just dogs. And like, you know, when people that don't own dogs are like, oh, like, they're just dogs, I'm like, yeah, like, you just haven't spent time with them. But like, for people that have spent time with them, I'm like, man, you understand that these dogs have personalities, that they're literally just like humans, except they can't, you know, speak English. And they have that personality, they have those emotions, like, you know, they do. So to think, like, in my mind, thinking that you know, Bone is sitting in that shelter, like, shaking because he's so afraid, or Bailey, you know, freaking out, like, you know, crying and whimpering in a corner, like, to think that happens still in a society where there are so many dog owners and there are so many people that understand dogs have emotions, is like a super to me, like, fucked up thing. Where I'm like, man, like, these dogs can't speak, but they can definitely show emotions. And I'm like, just trying to teach people that, like, man, like, understand this. Like, dogs feel emotions. Like, you should be like, when, you know, 2 million dogs in the States enter, you know, shelters every single year. 2 million.
2 million?
Yeah. Or it's 2 million animals. Sorry, but that includes cats. But it's like 1.1 million. That's like,
holy shit.
Over 1 million dogs enter the shelters every single year. Like, man, like, that's super messed up. Like, and a lot of them have to get euthanized because it's impossible to keep up. You can't just keep. What are you gonna do? Your whole city's just gonna be a giant shelter? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like, there's like a larger problem here that I like, you know, when I think about Bone, you know, being euthanized, or Bailey getting euthanized, I'm like, man, like that would destroy me. Like, that would absolutely destroy me thinking about. So to think that there's 2 million dogs or 2 million animals a year that enter the shelter system that don't even get a chance. You know, I think it's like, I have a platform, so I'm like, I should use this to do something.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, but that we just underestimate animals, right? Like, we just underestimate their ability to connect. And like you said, like, they have emotions, they have personalities, they know, I think, things before we know. You see all those videos of like animals, like when women are pregnant, that it just like lay on the stomach of the woman because they are like, something's happening in here. Like, they're so smart, they sense things, they smell things. One of my parents' shelter dogs, he's I've talked about this on the podcast before, but he's half pit bull, half Great Dane. Nice. And he can jump and be a little bit overwhelming at times. But when my grandma was staying with us, she has Alzheimer's. That dog would sit by her side and sit under her feet and just lay there and let her pet him, which was like the most heartwarming thing. And then also my mom and I were like, you little shit, you know exactly what you're doing because you jump on us, but you don't jump on her. What are you doing? Like, they know.
Oh,
they know.
100% they're smart. I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, Bone, I give it to him all the time. I'm like, you're an idiot, but you're so smart. Like he, like, because I give him shit when he steals something he knows he's not supposed to have. Like, he's not a dumb dog. He knows there's certain things he can have and certain things he can't. And when he steals something he's not supposed to have, and I'll be like sitting on the couch in the living room, he'll like walk by the living room, but like turn his head. So he's like, oh, he can't see me if I turn my head. But I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, I know you're doing something if your head's turned. But I'm like the fact that he, like, in his mind, knew enough that he's not supposed to have this item and he's trying to hide it from me. Like, that's smart. Like, it's a smart thing to do, but like the way he did it was just not the smartest. But I'm like, man, like these dogs are smart. These creatures, they're not stupid, but
Oh
like people
no,
don't see it, right?
not at all. No, my favorite is watching my parents' dogs try and like bury a toy away from you, but they're like sitting next to you and putting it in a blanket, but they're like,
Yeah.
they'll never know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my
They can't see
favorite.
it. They don't know.
It'll be under this blanket, they'll forget. But they still
Exactly.
are trying to hide it from you. And,
Yeah.
you know, they're so much smarter. I've been torturing myself lately looking at rescue sites nonstop because I want a dog so bad.
Yeah.
So bad. So bad. This conversation is not helping.
There you go.
I think the statistic you just said, I mean, I know this is just audio, so no one will be able to see my dumbfounded face, but when you said 2 million animals in the States enter shelters, like I knew it was high, but sometimes I just don't look at the numbers because it's sad, which is totally, I need to know the scope of the problem, but holy shit.
Oh yeah. It's a problem. It's like, and like, so I don't know if you've seen the movie I Love Dogs.
Mm-mm.
Watch it. It's I'm pretty sure it's a Wes Anderson movie. So it's like super it's super like it's like different and very artsy.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole movie is about, so what happens in the movie is I think it's Japan gets overrun by dogs because of overbreeding and overpopulation, and they can't handle the problem anymore because there's just too many dogs. And what happens is a sickness breaks out within the dogs. It's kind of ironic that coronavirus.
I was just gonna say,
but yeah, I know. So a sickness breaks out. It's called like dog cough or something like that. So what they do is they ban all dogs. All dogs get exiled and they ship them off. Every single dog in the entire country gets shipped off to an island where it's a garbage. It's like where they go dump their trash. It's another kind of like trope on society. But
I was just gonna say, wow, all of the metaphors here.
Yeah, exactly, right. But so what happens in the movie is the whole movie is about how one of a very elite person's dog gets shipped off by accident to this island, and this elite kid goes back to save them. It goes to this garbage island to save them, and then comes back to society and tries to reintroduce dogs into society. And it's like, we are on par and we are on path to essentially reach that. Like we are breeding at such a rate, in I think it was Norway or one of the Scandinavian countries, they just had a coronavirus outbreak in their mink farm and had to kill millions of minks. And it's like, man, like how as a society do we not understand that what we're doing right now, like you can't just keep breeding dogs and bringing them into society and then people abandoning them. Like society, like eventually the shelters will become overrun, and when the shelters become overrun, people will just abandon them into forests,
which already happens
at an alarming rate, but it's just going to become more and more prevalent. And then all of a sudden dogs are going to be everywhere, what I mean? And it's going to become a problem in places unless like legislation is introduced, right?
Okay.
And that's ultimately what it all kind of circles around to it. And I know a lot of people are like very anti-government and anti-control, but the fact of the matter is people are shitty. Like people are going to do whatever they can until they get and continue to get away with. Like that is, at the end of the day, people are shitty, and that's what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot continue to expect people to do the right thing. It just will not happen. And until someone steps in and tells these breeders, like, yeah, you can't do this anymore. Until like all our shelters are cleared out. And it's actually interesting because if you look at a lot of European countries, they've done this. In Germany, like you're not allowed to buy from a breeder until one, you've proven that you've looked at every shelter and the shelters are empty, and two, like you have to pass like courses to buy a dog in like European countries. You have to like buy, like, if you have a car, you have to buy special like mounts for the car and special seatbelts and all this other crazy stuff. It's like it is a very
Damn.
intensive process in European countries.
It makes you have to be like a responsible pet owner, basically.
Well, exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it's just like, this is what we need. Like, they are not having a dog problem in Germany or, you know, these other countries, like in these European countries. Like, they actually, a lot of those countries ship in dogs from other countries that are having overpopulation problems, like shipping in shelter dogs, because they've done such a good job managing the dog population that there's no shelter dogs.
Wow.
And like that's where like we need to progress to as a society, or we're just going to end up like Isle of Dogs, where all dogs are going to be banned. And like that's, you know, that's like the other side. It's just like, hey, like if you guys can't get your shit together, this is what's like, this is where we're headed. Because like, you know, like I said, it's not like these numbers are decreasing. You know, 2 million animals a year enter the shelters. The shit's not decreasing. The more people we get, the more people that live in North America, the more people that are born, the more these numbers are going up, right? So like we got to do something.
Well, and I think a lot of people fall back on the like, but I wanted this dog, or I wanted this specific thing, or I've heard people being like, I was waiting for the right color dog. I'm just like, I can't with you. I actually can't have a conversation with you. Like,
yeah.
But you can find any type of dog in rescue. There are not only dogs specific for breeds, like pit bull rescues and Great Dane rescues and whatever, but also just like there's every type of dog in a rescue.
Literally, like, and especially with that website I was saying, petfinder.com, you can filter by breed, you can filter by age, you can filter by weight, you can filter by like location, you literally filter by anything. So like,
wow,
like all of those excuses go out the window. Like if you want a puppy, filter by puppies, and it'll show you all the puppies in shelter. It's like, it's not like you can't get puppies in shelters. Like the problem is it's the Instagram effect. Everyone wants the Instagrammable dog, right? Everyone
that
wants
just made my stomach hurt.
Well, it's the truth, right?
I know.
It's everyone wants that Instagrammable dog, and it's kind of hilarious that I have obviously a very Instagrammable dog. Well, two.
I was just gonna say, don't leave Bailey out of this.
No, yeah, both of them are very good looking, right? Like, but the thing is, I got both of them in shelters still, so it's not like you can't get an Instagrammable dog in shelters, and that is far from the reason I got them. I got them because they were huge, and I wanted big dogs.
Yeah.
But like to all those people that, you know, want the Instagrammable dog, want the picture perfect dog, it's like, you can still do that. You can still, like, you know, if 2 million animals are entering the shelters every year, like, you don't think you can, you don't think you'd be able to get one?
Mm-hmm.
Out of 2 million animals, you don't think one's going to be right for you? Like, come on. Like, people are just lazy. You know what I mean? People are lazy and shitty, and like, they just don't want to. And it sometimes, you know, it's hard to think about that, you know, people won't do the right thing, but like they won't. So, you know,
so you're fully in support of like legislation needs to help this problem, because you're like, without it, correct me if I'm wrong, but your point of view is like, without it, here's our problem.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like I said, like you can already see the problem,
right?
And like what's happening. And you can just see, like, it's like the capitalistic society we live in is people are going to do, like, if you can make money doing it, people are going to do it. Right? And puppy mills, you can make a lot of money because people are stupid and they'll pay a lot of money. So like, there's only so much education you can do as a person. Like, I can educate, you know, I have 17,000 followers. I can educate all 17,000 followers I have, but you know, in Canada, there's 32 million other people. like, you know what I mean? There's only so much education you can do,
right?
Before like there needs to be something else. And like, it's not like shelters are something that's new. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like rescues are like a new thing that like have just popped up in the past 10 years. So like, people are still learning about them, you know, all that stuff. It's like, no, shelters have been around. Like, dog, like the pound is like, you know, you see Like you see that in movies that are based in like the 1800s. You know what I mean? Like the pound, which is a shelter, have been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
People know about this. They're in books, they're in movies, they're in like they made an entire movie called Lady and the Tramp about about it. Like it's a whole Disney movie. It's like there's only so much education you can do about shelter dogs before you're like, okay, this isn't fucking working. We need to do something else. Like, and it's like all this. It's all like it kind of goes back to the same stuff with the coronavirus. It's like, all right, we need to do something. Like what we're doing right now isn't working. We need to do something else. And like we could go on forever about it, but like like we need legislation. Like people have shown for the past literally hundreds of years,
right,
that they're shitty, and this problem is slowly getting out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, we'll be at a point where we won't be able to control it without actively hunting dogs, because they're going to overrun our population. And it's like a super fucked up thing to think about. But if you look at other places, like, if you look at places like Montana and Idaho and these places that have a lot of national parks, when they have overpopulation problems, they put bounty outs on those overpopulated problems, and they get paid to kill those animals. At a certain point,
right,
the way we're progressing, if people keep abandoning dogs in forests and in national parks and just like out in the streets, like it happens all the time, these dogs are going to start having to be hunted because they're going to be wild dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
If like with Wolfie, we're lucky we got him at a young age. We were able to domesticate him still. But in Manitoba, it's a very serious problem in northern Manitoba, where people abandon dogs into the wilderness, and they roam around in packs and they kill people because they're wild animals.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we will progress to that as a society if something isn't done. So, like, yes, like I am full in for like legislation, and there needs to be some control over. If you're going to still allow breeders, there needs to be some control over. You can't just let everyone breed dogs. It's one, insanely unethical, and two, it's leading to a more widespread issue.
Do you see any ethical way for breeding to exist?
In the current state of our society, absolutely not. Let's say, I know a lot of people will take offense to this with service dogs and dogs with, they need dogs that have jobs and things like that. But, with our RCMP in Canada, they've mandated that they're going to take a certain amount of rescue dogs to train as police dogs, every year.
Oh, wow.
And it's just I get it. Like I get there are like certain jobs and certain careers and certain people, like there are certain illnesses and certain people that need service dogs and need, canine dogs and police dogs and things like that. But like, it's shown that you can still get those dogs from shelters. You know what I mean? It like you can still train those dogs. Like
that's the pushback a lot I hear is service animals. They're like, what about service animals?
For sure. And okay, like even if we took that out of it, even if we're like, okay, you know what? If you're breeding a dog to be a service animal, good. Continue, you got it, no problem. What percentage of people are getting dogs for, a service animal?
Yeah.
It is a very slim percent. It is not, the overwhelming majority. It's not
right.
I would, I don't know the exact statistic, but I would take a gander that it's less than 1% of people that are buying dogs are getting them for service animals.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like, okay, like sure, let people breed dogs to continue to, have those service animals. Sure, great, whatever. That's not addressing the issue. Like,
yeah, totally.
It's like we're not dealing with the 99.5% of people that are buying dogs not to be service animals.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So in today's society, as it stands, with 2 million dogs or 2 million animals entering shelters every single year, No, there just isn't an ethical way in North America to buy from a breeder.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, unless you need a very specific dog for a very specific reason, um, and you've tried to look at in shelters, it's not ethical. If you're getting a family dog, no, it's impossible to know that these dogs, these perfectly fine dogs, are sitting in shelters suffering, and going and asking someone to bring another dog into society for your own need, even though there's perfectly good dogs that could meet your need in shelters. It's completely unethical.
I remember hearing where I went to grad school. I would go to the shelter there because someone I knew would foster animals. So I would go with them to pick them up and stuff. And she was telling us about how, like Easter was coming and they'll probably have a lot of bunnies soon. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, Easter comes and these parents buy bunnies for their kids. And then they realize that they don't really want a bunny. And we get a bunch of bunnies around Easter. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's the same with it's at Christmas too with puppies.
Ugh.
Plenty of people do it with they'll buy puppies at Christmas, have them for like a week, and then be like, oh, this is too much work, and then abandon. So in January, the shelters get flooded with puppies.
Well,
Crazy.
this episode, coming out the first week of December, hopefully a few people are like, oh, adopt for
Yeah.
the holidays.
Yeah.
Go to a shelter and help them out.
It'd be
How
nice.
how are shelters funded in Canada? Is it all private?
It depends. We do have some that are so like in Winnipeg, we have the Winnipeg Humane no, sorry, we have the Winnipeg Animals Services.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like your typical pound.
Right.
It is city funded.
So like some similar to the States kind of mix of everything.
Yeah. So we have like the animal services, but then we have like the Humane Society. That's I think they do get a little bit of provincial funding.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's like largely like donors and stuff like that. And then we have a bunch of smaller shelters that are completely like run on like fundraised money and have no provincial or federal funding kind of thing.
Man, that's a lot. Like it's a lot of money to keep a shelter going.
Oh, it's insane. It's an insane amount of work, and it's the same amount of stress, and like I don't think a lot of people realize, because a lot of the times these animals come in with a lot of medical conditions that the shelter is responsible for paying for. So a lot of the times, like the vets will give shelters discounts and things like that because they're trying to help them out. But at the same time, like still expensive. Like there's a couple of shelters I work with that have like $8,000 to $15,000 in vet bills that they're like, man, like, we can't take any more dogs on until we get these vet bills covered, because the vets are like, obviously like, hey, like we need you to pay because we need to pay our own bills, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's crazy how much money and time goes into these things that like so many people like just don't realize.
Well, and even if I mean, I don't personally understand it, but when people are like, I'm not an animal person, like that, I feel like that's a red flag, but all right.
Yeah.
Like,
for sure.
like, okay. But when people say that, like, even if you don't connect to the emotional part of this, financially, like you said, bone could have been like $5,000-$6,000. And obviously you have to pay the shelter and costs of whatever, but I'm guessing you didn't pay $5,000 for bone.
No, I got him from a smaller shelter. So it cost me a little bit more than most of the time. So like if I was to get Bailey or Bone from the Humane Society here, it's like $350.
Right.
And they come neutered or spayed, fully vaccinated, like full checkup. And I think they come with like a couple months worth of like pet insurance. If you buy from a breeder, you'll pay like $5,000. They won't come neutered or spayed. They won't come vaccinated. They won't come with pet insurance. It makes literally zero financial sense. It is so dumb. Like, it is literally the stupidest thing you can do. Like, I ended up paying $700 for Bone because he was a bigger dog and he was at a smaller shelter. So like, I had no problem paying 700.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? Like, they were smaller. They neutered him. They vaccinated him. They dewormed him. Yeah, perfect. We're good. Like, I covered their costs and food basically. So yeah, I'm fine with doing that. But yeah, like it's ridiculous to think about, even just from a financial standpoint. Like, take the dogs out. It makes no sense. Like, you can get a perfectly good dog with everything for like $300 to $500. It's like 10% of the cost. Like,
yeah, it's wildly different.
Yeah, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense.
So do you plan to open your own rescue someday?
I don't know. It's something I've thought about a bunch, and it's an interesting question. The problem with rescues and like animal sanctuaries and things like that is, like we've been talking about, is they all rely on fundraised money, right? They're all shoestring budgets, and
Yep.
I want to help dogs, I want to help animals and do all that, but I also don't want to, for the rest of my life, be begging people for money.
Yeah.
That's not something I think I would get enjoyment out of. So I'm trying to figure out a way to create an animal sanctuary or an animal kind of rescue business somehow, that would kind of be self-sustaining. Like, I don't need it to be profitable. I just need it to pay the bills itself. And, if we have to fundraise here and there, sure, whatever. I don't care. But I don't want to be like every month setting up a GoFundMe because, Bone broke a leg, or I got a new cow in that, has all this shit going on. It's just like, if I'm going to do this, I want it to be self-sustaining, that like this can make sense, that like it's sustainable. You know what I mean? Because, like, if you're just constantly like looking for fundraisers and money and donations and all that, like, you'll burn out. Like,
yeah,
you'll
totally.
burn out, and then you're no good to anybody. You're not helping animals. You're not helping yourself. Like, you know what I mean? You're useless if you burn out. So I'm trying to figure out how to kind of sustainably do that. It wouldn't be for a couple of years anyway. There's a lot of other things that I would want to do first before I did something like that. But it's a thought that it's been thrown around in my mind a lot. It needs to be like fleshed out a lot more.
Well, keep me in the loop, because I say all the time, like, someday I'm just going to have this big sanctuary and animals are going to roam and they're going to be saved. So I'm in. I want to help.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out. One of these days we'll figure it out. We'll put our minds together and see what we can come up with.
We'll drive around in our bus caravan.
There you go. Saving all the animals.
Saving all the animals. That actually sounds pretty ideal.
Yeah. Very ideal, actually.
Yeah. It's hard to have this conversation with some people, I think, about like shelter pets and breeders, because people get really defensive. And have you had conversations that like get really, I don't know, heated or uncomfortable with people that like don't understand?
Not really. That's one of the benefits of being a 6 foot, 230 pound male. In today's society is, generally speaking, most people don't argue with me, especially not in person. They might say things behind my back, but it's not something I care about. So, but yeah, no, for the most part, no one's really ever said anything to me, and not even surprisingly online. I've had a couple Twitter, warriors call me out and try to call me out for things before, but never for the dog thing.
Interesting.
I think it's difficult to argue the facts. Like, I just present the facts and be like, argue this. 2 million animals enter the shelter every year. You going to a breeder is a shitty decision. Argue that. Like, you can't. Like, it's it's like, okay, like I want a specific breed. I'm like, boom, here's Pet Finder. Go sort by breed. Boom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The shelter rejected my application. It's just like, then you probably shouldn't own a dog. If a shelter rejected your application, it's because you're probably shitty, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? It's like, obviously shelters sometimes get hundreds of applications for a dog, so
Right.
they have to filter them somehow. But like,
Yeah.
but it's like, man, like if the shelter rejected your application because like your living situation isn't great,
Ooh.
don't get a dog. Like,
maybe you should hold off.
exactly. It's like maybe like they're telling you something, like don't get a dog. Like, but but like, yeah, so like for the most part, like no one's really argued with me. And I know especially with women, they have very different lived experiences. Even like when I grew up in Niagara, and me and my brother were bartenders there for a while, and my mom was a waitress and my sister was a waitress there. And me and my brother's lived experiences as bartenders in Niagara Falls was significantly different than my mom's and sisters. Like, me and my brother never dealt with anything negative. Like, people were, and we worked at a restaurant where the food was gross too. So like, and we knew the food was gross. So like, we'd go up to a table, like, how's the food? They're like, oh, it's delicious. You know what I mean? And we're like, oh, like, whatever. Like, we know you're talking shit, but I don't care. Like, as long as you tip, whatever. But like, like my mom's and sisters experience, like people would spit the food into their hand and be like, here, you try this. And
I've been a
like,
server and a bartender.
Yeah, there you go. Like, so you understand, right? Like, so, you know what I mean? Like, so have people like confronted me about my views on dogs? Like, no, like, no, people generally don't confront me on much.
Yeah.
But like, especially not on the dog thing. And I think it's just probably because it's just it's very hard to argue when, I can just present all these facts. It's like,
yeah,
you're arguing nothing, right?
Mm-hmm. Which I think is cool because you recognize you're like, okay, I have privilege in this sense. Like, I get to speak about these things. Like, I'm going to use it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, that's it, right? It's just like, I could just post pictures of me playing football like every other athlete, but like football is cool, man, but like whatever, like football is going to end one day. So like then what, right?
Right.
And you're just some guy that posts old pictures of you playing football.
like the glory years.
Yeah, exactly. You're fucking like, what's that guy's name on Napoleon Dynamite? The uncle.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
right?
I do. Yeah, I do.
So like, right? Like you're just like that guy sitting on the porch talking about fucking high school football.
when you peaked.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sick, right? So like, at least if I can, I'm gonna try and do something with it now, right?
Yeah, I think that it's so important, and people really underestimate. This is gonna get really corny, but I fully believe it, so I'm gonna say it anyway. But like, people underestimate the reach they can have. Like, I am not a 6'2", whatever, however much you weigh, man, but like, I'm 5'2" and 120 pounds soaking wet, so like my impact is a little different, but I still can reach people in a different way,
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
And even if one person reaches out to me and was like, whoa, the yoga class you taught tonight made me really like slow down and think about life, like, that awareness they're going to share with someone else, or that awareness is going to help them. And like, the ripple effect could be that maybe 3 or 4 people this week think about the world a little differently. Like, we just underestimate our reach.
100%. I think sometimes, especially on social media, it's crazy to see, I have the analytics set up on my account, and like on Twitter, I have like 10,000 followers, like nothing crazy, like, 10,000 is like a lot of people, but like, it's not like, and they, when you have people with like hundreds of thousands and millions of followers, like 10,000 is very, it's a small amount. But like, when I look at my analytics, every month, over 2 million people see my thing, like see my post. You know what I mean? So when you think about that impact that, that post had, that like, I posted a picture of Bone and Bailey playing, you know what I mean? Like, you think about that, like, for me, that's just my everyday lived life. And taking 10 seconds to post about it on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, but like it can be seen and viewed by literally millions of people. And we all have that impact. And if you think about, you know, the coronavirus and how it spreads, it's like the problem with it is it's not that, you know, us young people are going to get it and die from it. It's that we're going to get it, spread it to one person. That one person is going to spread it to 5 people. Those 5 people are going to spread it to 100 people, right? And it's like, and it's the same thing. You know what I mean? It's the same thing when you're talking about all these other things. It's like you have that ability to spread that to 5 people, then those 5 people spread it out to 100 people, right? But like so many people get caught up in only spreading it to the 5 people at the start, that they don't see that their message was then shared to 100 other people and then to 10,000 other people from there, right? But they just see that it was only shared to those 5 people, right?
Or only got this many likes or whatever it is.
Exactly, right? So, and they see that and they get caught up in that. And then that's where like a lot of, you know, people like kind of like fizzle out, and they think they're not like good enough. And it's just like, man, like you have a lot more impact than you think, even if you're talking to your family about it. Like, I turned both my parents vegan. I told them, like, I'm like, hey, like if you guys like don't figure it out, like I just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like if you guys die because of the way you eat, like I'm going to be very upset. And like they went vegan because of it, you know what I mean? And people like underestimate how much influence they have just because they don't have 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
And get like 10,000 likes on a picture. It doesn't mean you haven't actually influenced somebody. You know what I mean? And I think it speaks a lot more when you speak your own truth, even if it only is to 100 or 200 people, right? And it's very underestimated in today's society.
Totally. And then you can tell when people, or at least I can on social media, lose that authenticity because they're trying for the 3 million people versus speaking to the ones that are listening. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't have, you know, let's say as many Instagram followers as you, but if I like gave up on that, what about the few people that have gone vegan because of what I posted? And like, ask me for, I get random, you know, DMs about like, okay, I'm kind of interested because of what you posted, but like, I don't know where to start. And I'm like, yay, like here's 14 million, you know, like I share this like whole thing. I'm like so excited. I'm probably very overwhelming, but I'm just like, I'm so excited. Like you lose sight of the people you could help by trying to reach all these people that you like don't have contact with yet.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And you know, I think people need to kind of focus on you know what's right in front of them instead of what's the potential of what's out there, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. That was deep, man. we really got into it.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Is there anything else you want to share about shelters or dog love or any advice for anyone?
I think the biggest advice for me when people are looking for dogs is like be patient. Like it took me literally 8 months to adopt Bone, and then it took me I ended up, when did I get Bailey? I got Bailey like a year and a half after I got Bone, and I fostered a dog in between, and I'm looking for a third dog now. I've been looking for about 6 months and still haven't found one.
Oh, you are looking for a third dog?
Oh yeah, I'm always looking for dogs.
Your face. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, and a lot of people get discouraged. Like I said, like they get declined from a shelter or something like that. And you know, you can get declined for a shelter for a million different reasons. But like a lot of the times they just get overwhelmed with applications, right? So just be patient. Like you'll find a dog that's meant to be in your life at the right time. You can't rush the process here. Like it's not a process you want to rush. It's right. It's you know, adopting a dog, it's a big deal. It's a big life step, especially if it's your first dog. And it's something that's not to be taken lightly. So like, yeah, if it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months. If it takes a year, it takes a year. But it's definitely not something to be rushed. And, you know, I always find it funny because a lot of people will get upset with the shelter system taking so long, and they'll go on a waiting list for a breeder. But then I'm like, okay, so you're gonna wait 2 years on the wait list for a breeder? Like,
yes.
just why don't you just like during those 2 years just keep looking for an adoptable? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like be patient. Like, the shelters are doing the best they can with the resources they have, and like they're trying their best. But like, yeah, like if it's meant to be, like it'll come your way, kind of thing. Like, you just like, you don't want to rush into adopting a dog, the wrong dog for you. If you're lazy, don't get a husky. Like, you know what I mean? If you're active, don't get a Great Pyre. Like, it's you know, if you travel a lot, you know what I mean? Like, you got to get the right kind of dog that's going to be okay with that. So like, do your research, be patient, and just kind of like just be patient. It's the biggest one.
That's really good advice. That always blew my mind too, where people are like, well, it takes so long. I'm on the list for a breeder for a bred dog. And I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people are stupid. So.
Oh, and I was going to say too, if anyone's doing any holiday shopping, you have some fun. If you want to put in a shameless plug.
Yeah, there you go. I very shameless plug. I did just launch our Rescue Dog Kitchen merch store. We have an entire merch store. I know they won't be able to see it, but I'm actually wearing the sweater right now.
Yes.
It says dog hair is my new aesthetic. But yeah, so we just launched our merch store. We sell mugs, we sell stickers, we sell sweaters, we sell tote bags and Christmas cards right now. And a lot of, we're kind of expanding it to a lot of other things. And the whole point of it is to raise funds for dog shelters. So 50% of the profits are getting donated back to dog shelters kind of everywhere. We just launched it this week, and we've already done, I think, almost 4,000 in sales. So,
oh my gosh, John.
Yeah. We're super happy with how it was. Everyone kind of like perceived it and came and has liked it so far. So we're definitely going to be expanding it to include a lot more. In the future, we want to do like aprons next. Aprons and toques are going to be the next thing on the list.
Yes, I need an apron. Yeah. Yes.
We're sitting on 600 face masks right now as well that we're trying to get printed.
Okay.
So we'll have face masks coming out. But yeah, it's like everything's like dog related, but everything's also eco-friendly. So our tote bags are made from recycled cotton. Our sweaters are made from organic cotton, which uses significantly less than regular cotton. Mm-hmm. And everything was sourced within North America. So the sweaters were sourced from a company in the States. The mugs were from a company in Canada. The tote bags were from a company in Canada. The designers I used to help me design the products were local designers in Winnipeg, and things like that. So I try to do everything as eco-friendly and responsible as possible. I didn't
just really thoughtful.
Yeah, like I didn't want to just be like another fast fashion company, right?
Right.
Like I definitely could have gotten these sweaters for significantly cheaper. Like I was looking at places, they're like, oh yeah, like you can get them for like $2 to $5 a sweater, where I paid $29 a sweater.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yeah, obviously my profit margins would have been way bigger, and I would have been able to raise a lot more money for dogs. But like at the same time, like fast fashion and the destruction of the environment is only, it's a catalyst to like hurting other animals. So like, what's the point of doing that?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make sense. Like, yeah, you're raising money for one animal, but like you're destroying another animal's environment. So like,
right.
why would I do that? You know what I mean? So everything, we tried our best to make everything eco-friendly and responsible, and all of our packaging is recyclable right now, and things like that. So but yeah, it's really exciting. I think we're at like 50% sold out in our first week. So we're going to have,
that's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. So we're super happy with how it started. It's a one-man operation. So I do, I do everything. I pack, I ship, I get everything out myself. And, it's a lot, but it's for the dog. So I'm super happy about it.
I can put the link in the show notes.
Yeah.
So sure. People can check that out, because hopefully my mom doesn't listen to this episode before Christmas, but she probably needs one of those tote bags and or sweatshirts.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm excited for aprons. I keep I every time I cook, I'm like, I'm not gonna wear an apron. That's too domestic. But I keep like fucking up my sweaters and stuff.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
I'm gonna need to jump on that when you release those.
Yeah. I'll let you know. Don't worry.
Sounds great. Well, thank you again for joining me. I love talking to you, and this was a really fun episode that I wanted to do before the holidays and in honor of all the shelter pets that need love.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. It's always a good time. I always enjoy being able to kind of spread the message and help dogs out when I can, right?
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I hope you learned as much as I did in this episode. It was really great to talk about this issue and to celebrate shelter pets in honor of the day. I hope that the next time you are in the market for a new animal, a new pet for your family, you will think about adopting and not shopping. If you're enjoying this podcast, hit subscribe wherever you're listening. If you want to help me get this into the ears of more listeners, send it to a friend, text it to a family member, share on social media, and tag me. Whatever you can do really helps out. And head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, and you could be read on air as a review of the week. Until next time.